9:35.
Like we might have done something, but don't look at it.
I don't see him anymore.
Don't show your hand.
Is he okay?
I don't know, because,
Who's that?
Getty, you know,
I haven't seen Getty.
Synopsis Publishing.
Mr. Chairman,
I know they don't do the Woodside Times, I don't think anymore, it's like one thing now, they condense to.
Hey, Bill, when was the last
All
time
right,
you
gotta
saw
let
Getty?
people back in here.
Wow. I don't know. I
It's
can't remember.
9:35,
Here.
coming out of
So
You
executive
haven't
session.
heard that is he okay? You haven't heard anything?
after.
Oh,
Bill, I want you to know, we didn't take any votes or anything in executive session, but there's gonna be an issue here, and I'm gonna ask Chair to explain it as far as the litigation, not Chair, Council to explain it as far as the litigation, and then the board would probably take some action, consider taking some action.
So the discussion was on the Ellen Bogan matter, which, as the board knows, is a vendor contract for some advertising services, where the board has pursued them for non-performance. The board authorized at the last meeting for me to extend an offer to Ellen Bogan, which I did. I have not heard back, and I believe the board previously had indicated a desire to go forward if they get no response from Ellen Bogan with small claims litigation, and so if someone on the board wants
So I will
to.
entertain a motion to proceed with the Ellen Bogan matter.
So
We're going to small claims court. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I do. Do I have a second? Dr.
Second.
D? Anything on the question?
The only thing I'll say is in connection with that, I will send initially a certified mail return receipt letter demanding, reiterating the offer, letting them know that we intend to pursue litigation, and then I will proceed.
We'll continue to utilize that as standard operating procedure. So I have a motion. I have a second. Anything else on the question? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. You need a roll call for that instead, or no?
I don't think so.
So we're good. All right, that brings us to financials.
So on page 11 of 51, you have the financials through the end of July for the IDA. Just a general comment, the way to quickly ascertain whether a particular row is in good shape or not in good shape, meaning over or under budget. Look at the last column, and we should be at approximately 58% for every column. So where we're more than 58% on the revenue side, or on the income side rather, that we're in good shape. We're under 58% on the revenue side or income side, we're not in good shape, and the reverse is true for the expenses. So for example, on expenses, which is the biggest, we have the biggest variances there. Administrative staff fees, we should be at 58%, give or take, but we're at 74%, so we have a negative variance, if you would. And the reason is obvious. We have some, at least to me, we have so many additional things that the administrative staff, Rose and her staff are doing, that's why we're over budget. Legal fees, same thing, so many items. We have the COVID grants that we came up with, so just many things, including review of different applications. And you go down the line, audit, we're over because of timing. We won't be paying any more audit fees this year that I'm aware of.
No, we're done.
So that's just a timing issue. And the same for contracts for other services, a variety of different contracts for other services, particularly the video.
Well, I want to just say too, the contracts for other services was put in there, but we didn't know what the video was going to cost. So we have to revise the budget. So it's not, I just want, because Danny was saying it's not good. It's not that we're over budget. We have to revise the budget because we had no idea and didn't budget properly.
We may have been doing business with a law of diminishing returns. The money that we're spending now and getting out in front of things, I think you're going to see the results of that over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
That's going to.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I saw January's through July. I mean, we lost, down 56,000, correct?
Yeah, but that's just, I mean, the other problem with that is we don't receive fees monthly, you know, for
No, and I
revenue,
get it,
right?
I get it, I
So
get it. I just want to
it's
see
hard
start
to budget
stimulating some
this.
income.
As I said, I think you're gonna see the results of this, um,
Over time.
over time. I think, it's like an actuarial type deal, so, okay.
So what
Anything
I
else
do-
on the financials? Rick?
Yeah, what I do recommend is that, we need to allocate approximately another $40,000, to the budget. I'm not sure how we work that out with the ABO. We do have a period of time where we make adjustments, but we're running at such a rate that we're going to be, off budget by about $45,000.
We just have to, we can do the same thing we did last year, we just have to revise the budget. And I would say that we would schedule a finance committee meeting next month, and I'll talk to Faye about it, because we have to send it into ABO by October 31st, as well as a budget for the next 4 years.
I think it's pretty easy,
by October.
Just in our discussion, creating that contingency account.
There isn't a spot for a contingency account, in the ABO,
There is not.
no.
Okay.
So you
Moving
could put it in
forward,
the contract
after
for
the
other
fiscal
services.
year, we go to do our Paris report or our UTEP, is that in there we put in a contingency account or some sort of account. I mean, a budget's great as long as the numbers add up to what it's supposed to be at the end of the day. If something is 20% more, but something's 15% less, I'm more apt to look at the 5% discrepancy and figure it's going to take care of itself in time. If we had a crystal ball, it would be great. So we'll follow the ABO, do what we have to do, but let's seek clear counsel as to our opportunity to create,
Yeah.
a separate fund.
Yeah, I know when we created this though, I'm sorry, Dan, when we created this last year, we did say, there's no way this is gonna be 100% accurate, we'll revise it next year when we know what the expenses will be, because we started with staff halfway through the year. Last year was a strange year, we didn't have the live streaming requirements, we didn't have some of these expenses that we have now, so I think we'll be able to do a better job, but they also require us to do 4 years out. You don't know what's gonna happen in 4 years.
Then you take, Dr. D, this is your purview.
Yeah.
You wanna weigh in?
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask Rick was about the finances right now. So at this current run rate, it looks like we would be pretty far up with deficit, but you're saying that you're thinking would be about 40,000, 50.
Somewhere
Slide that out a little bit.
50.
So is that assuming that some of the legal fees and other
Careful
things
of the time.
diminish over?
My assumption is that legal fees, administrative fees are gonna continue at the same rate, which is over budget.
So I guess what I'm saying is then how are we projecting a $40,000 deficit?
I just,
Higher run, right? If we're
what I
saying-
simply did was, what are we paying right now per month?
Yeah,
And then extend that for another 5 months.
yeah,
And add
Did-
it in there. So
Did you not
there
take
could be ups
revenue
and
into
downs.
consideration?
yeah.
Maybe more than 40 or
Yeah.
45,000. But right now, just anticipating that the two Joe's time, Rose's time, and her staff's time will continue at the same rate. We're currently running at about 16,000 a month.
Yeah.
Budgeted at about 10,000 a month. So
Right, but the other issue is the revenue, so that's what you're looking at, I think, Diane, is the overall, you were looking at just the expenses?
Yeah, I'm looking at overall.
We're not, we may not have
We're gonna continue to have
150,000 in
activity, so I
project
don't see
closing
it.
revenue.
I think it's got a level, it's like water seeks a level. Sooner or later, we'll go from the high point where we're active, and it'll reshuffle itself.
Yeah.
We're
This will
saying
be-
to go through this exercise of doing this, and we have a lot of projects potentially in the pipeline, right, that we,
Yes.
that's unusual for us in terms of the numbers, so I'm just,
Yes.
if we're gonna go through this process and exercise of doing that, I'm just,
I
yeah,
think
the
by,
exercise I went through was just for expenses.
Yeah.
On the revenue side, we're also out of whack, we anticipated, but on the revenue side, or income side, I'm anticipating that at least the one project, a nursing home, that we will get some fees for that, so we might be okay. It's the expense side that I was
that's really,
concerned.
okay.
Have you taken into the account of Joe, and Rose's added expense if we further on with anything that's out of compliance and it
yeah,
jumps up the ladder to a different level?
Well,
No.
it could jump to a different level, but again, what I used was run rate right now per month, on average, 16,000.
Okay, I'm just asking, that's it, I'm not holding you to a
Yeah, if we
number.
wind up with another project in front of us that takes an enormous amount of time.
Yeah.
It's
See-
possible. On that regard, if we did have a project that came in, you know, we might close it before the end of the year and have an enormous amount.
You can't look at budget numbers unless you're going to willing to factor in. We're looking at the unknown. You can't factor in budget numbers with the costs here if you don't take some sort of median number and factor that in as far as revenues.
I think-
Just if we're gonna go through the exercise and make an adjustment.
But by mid-September, we will have a better concept.
Sorry?
By mid-September, when we do finance
It will
committee
look
meeting,
wonderful. Come
we'll
on.
have a better concept, so we'll be able to do a better job of just saying 40 or 50,000. I think we'll do fine
Great.
in September. I've already started
Do it
going
as
through
far
the
we gave
budget.
it to you. There you go.
Do we have a date for the finance?
No, I have to set it up with Faye.
Okay.
Look, hey, we're trying to change it a little bit of a culture, not that it was broken, but do things a little bit differently. And it's always welcome to have eyes on budgets and remind people of where we're at. But a lot of this is the unknown as well, you know. You're hoping a project comes in. You're hoping you don't have as many, you know, and all due respect to council, as many legal entanglements and running into things. So, you know, I hope the news gets out about what's gonna go on with Ellen Bogan. I'm hoping that. So people realize that, you know, that we're not, you know, if you're supposed to perform a service, we pay you for it. If you don't, and you're out of line and you're not following your contract, then we're gonna seek remedy. Simple. So, I'm not uncomfortable with the budget.
And that's it?
Can I get a motion to accept the financials as presented?
Motion to accept financials as presented.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Anything else on the
Second.
question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. That brings us to Chair's report. There's been a couple of, we did a Zoom meeting, Rose and I were invited, Rick as well, I believe it was, Buttermilk Falls, a potential project.
Oh, that one was just us for that meeting.
Okay. So, people are asking us to, because of our relationship with economic development, it's a little premature yet, with Buttermilk, but, and this is why it's gonna be so important for the pre-screening. I listened to the applicant talk about a lot of things that, you know, once you get into it, it's gonna be a problem. If you meet with a pre-screen group and you discuss certain things with them, then it's gonna be easier when he comes with an application to meet before the board. Clearly. They have a project they're looking at, ending up doing a bunch of work on the riverfront down in Milton. And the whole thing is on a sandbank, and there's a lot of things involved there. You know, whether it's driving pile or, you know, wetlands or anything like that. So these are things that we can make them aware of initially. So I think that's going to be a help. We were also asked to appear with Brian Cahill's group, hospitality, economic development. There's a lot of things in there.
I think trans, I don't remember what else.
Yeah, well, listen, they wanted an idea, myself and Rick and Rose, how we felt the board was doing and the progress we were making. And, you know, we can tell everybody what we think, but it was the feedback that we got that I was very happy to hear. The fact that they cared about the things that we're doing and the efforts that we're undertaking. So it's nice, nothing really earth-shattering, just conversations with people, that's gonna happen every day. Did I miss anything, Rose?
No, yeah, I think you're right.
There you go, that's my report. That brings us to the Chief Executive Officer's report.
I figured, so on page 13, I figured you would all be interested to see the award that we had made for Randall. We were hoping he would come to accept it today, but obviously because of COVID and trying to stay away from other people, he felt it was better than he not. So we did mail it to him with the card that everybody signed. I think it came out really nice, to be honest.
Just
And
on
so
the
we-
record, I wanna recognize,
Yeah.
what a wonderful job Randall did in a tough time. I think, you know, again, I don't think you're gonna see the upside really for a few years, but, I will say this, as credit to Randall, we're on a more even footing with government in this area, because, you know, the undertaking himself, and as well as Rick and Fay as the vice chair, they did a lot of things to prove that the entity in and of itself could do these things. So we go back without hat in hand, and we're partners now with economic development and the governor, and the government in Ulster County. So well deserved.
Yeah. I need board approval for Hodgson Russ invoice on page 14. And that was for January through June. I had asked Joe, I know typically he's doing his invoices at the end of the year. But I'd asked Joe if he could get us an invoice for year to date so that we could start working on budget overages, etc. So we just need your approval.
You reviewed
Or
these?
not. Yes, I did.
Okay, what were your findings? Everything was in order?
Everything was in order, and I also want to note there's a courtesy discount, which pretty much takes the place of some of the board training, and actually a little bit more so, but the board training and then some from Joe as well.
I didn't charge for a couple of
Yeah.
That's a pretty, I'm doing the best I can to keep
Listen,
my
I
annual
understand
fees
that.
to a minimum and collect on projects as you need projects.
Let's have those conversations moving forward in governance or audit. I don't wanna put council on the spot with any of this. I don't think that's fair. But everything being in order,
Yep.
No concerns, you reviewed them.
Yes, I did.
Have a motion to pay the invoices.
I'll make a motion to pay the
Do I have a
invoice.
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, thank you. Cyber liability.
So something I started looking at with Randall, and then we had talked to. We have currently two different. I'm sorry, I'm looking over here. Two different insurance companies for our other policies. When I asked the other insurance companies to help us with the cyber liability for some kind of quote, they sent me the forms to fill out entirely by myself, which they are massive forms. It's not just a yes or no. There's a lot of questions. And so I went to somebody that was willing to kind of work with me and do the bulk of the labor themselves on the application at Ulster Insurance. And I got some quotes on that. My concern was cyber liability because we have a lot of confidential things emailed to us, and we have people's social security numbers. We have a lot of confidential information that we want to make sure if there was, God forbid, ever a breach, that we are covered. So there are 3 different quotes from different insurance agencies. There's $1,000 per year from Beasley. And then there's a quote of $1,860 from Travelers. It's crazy the difference here. And then the last one was $862 is the cheapest one, and that's from Westchester. So I just
Well,
wanted
the
to
two lower
put that out
priced
there.
ones, are they apples to apples?
Yes, everything was the same. Yep.
You vetted the numbers with them, both of them?
Yep, we went through all of the numbers
Who's
together.
we? You and your staff?
No, the insurance agent and I went through them all. 2 insurance agents actually.
And
So
what
the
you
one
do?
with Westchester is Chubb. Chubb is the insurer.
Yep.
Could I just mention,
Please.
on page 35 of 51, it's a proposal from Westchester/Chubb. They have some additional services at an added cost that they'll perform. Whatever we do with the insurance, whichever company we choose, that's fine. But I recommend that we take a look at, for example, network vulnerability scans. We take a look at having somebody come in, it will be an extra fee, to determine what the vulnerabilities are.
So it's not that simple
Go ahead.
because you guys don't. I know. it was difficult to do this because it's not simple. So you guys don't have your own networks. You don't have your own computers. You're working off of ours in our office. So we do have coverage for all of those things. The issue is really your email is your email. So if somebody hacks into that email, that's not something our office
So
is.
you're saying the real vulnerability is at our end, not your end?
Yeah,
That's
that's the
Just
only.
a quick question,
the only
Westchester
stuff.
County is one of the contiguous counties that we work in. When we're looking at developers from areas, is, you know,
Well, the
Ulster,
insurance company.
Dutchess, Sullivan.
Westchester is part of our,
No, it's not.
No,
But
no, that's not.
I misunderstood.
What, like, for instance, if you turn around and there's a project and we, you know, if it's local labor, do we consider people from Westchester County local labor
No.
because of contiguous counties? Is it a contiguous county or no? What
No,
are the
it's not.
counties?
No.
Then what are the counties?
Sullivan, Dutchess, Green, Orange, obviously Ulster, what's it, is Monroe?
Monroe.
No, that's Orange County.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But
No,
you're
there's
talking
Monroe
way up.
County, but that's not it. I can't remember what the other one is, but
Oh,
Westchester's
okay.
not one of them.
What I was getting at was, given the fact that out of the two lower numbers there from New York, I'm a little bit more comfortable utilizing somebody in New York than
There-
somebody in Connecticut.
Oh, yeah, but they're all through Ulster Insurance here at Ulster Savings Bank.
Okay,
They
but the
just ran
dollars
through-
flow somewhere else.
Some of it does. Some of it does. The insurance company we would use is Ulster Insurance at Ulster Savings Bank. They use one of the larger insurance companies to insure, like any other broker.
So it comes down to pennies on the pound. Do you have
Yeah,
a
a portion
recommendation?
goes to the main company, but a portion goes to Ulster Savings Bank.
Did
So
anyone make recommendations since already using, I know the county uses a certain,
Insurance company.
yeah, what, this county use, I guess is the question.
No, I don't know who the county uses. I could find that out instead. I just started with our insurance. I went to an insurance company that was gonna do most of the work instead of having me do it because I don't think I'm qualified
It
to
just
do that.
seems to me like this is a good price, we should just go for it and do it.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
they're
what's
like
the
this,
issue?
so is there a preference there?
And the insurance agency recommended that we choose the 862 also.
Okay, well,
So why don't we just do it?
I'll make a motion
I'll second.
that we choose the quote from Westchester.
anything else on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried?
I'm sorry, Kay, did you make the motion?
I made the motion.
Okay, and Rick second. Okay.
Okay, that brings us to committee reports, audit committee.
So audit, first thing I wanted to share is that we'll have our audit meeting, on Monday, August 24th at 9:30 a.m. And the other thing I wanted to bring forward to the board is, our friend Inez, from compliance report that we have, that we have issues again. So I believe it was 2 months ago, Rose, that we had contacted them, was it Inez?
Oh, yeah, Ines, we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, we're back, so I don't know if I'm not bringing forward any specific recommendation other than letting you know that,
I think we should send a letter again, shall we? I think that should be automatic. I don't think it's anything that we should ever think twice about. If you're out of compliance, then send them a letter.
So the letter we sent last time was strictly because they were missing documentation. We've not sent a letter.
We send a generic letter that says you're not in compliance and put in parentheses
What it-
any of the caption.
But we hadn't sent a letter about the labor issue because they kept saying that it was only the framer that was causing the issue. And now the framer,
Here's what I'm thinking, we're talking about budget numbers and increases in this and that. How about a generic letter that puts things in a caption that we're out of compliance with?
yes, we have
We
one
don't
for
have
that.
to create a new letter every time we do it.
Yes,
The form letter that we did last time around says you're out of compliance in the following ways, and has a blank for rules and their statutes, so we can.
That works for me.
Yeah, Mike drafted a good one.
Or is it every report that we get that goes to audit is a monthly report? Didn't they also give us a year-to-date report?
This is the one they consider their board report.
Say that again?
Loki Brill sends a few reports, but this is the one that's for the board.
So the report that Diane is referring to, is that
That's
a
in here.
particular month?
Oh, it's for the month. It's for
Okay,
the
so
month.
where is the year-to-date report?
there isn't one from Loki Brill.
So
They
we need
don't-
one. That's my
They
point.
don't do
We
a
need
year to date. I don't think there's a year to date.
We can go back
Well, they need to
through and put
create
together the
Thank you.
monthly
Okay.
reports. and
Because
see if it was a
I
year.
almost could care less if 1 month is out of whack and every other month is great.
Right.
So we need a year-to-date report from your.
Every month has been out of whack.
But how can you
So that makes
proceed
it
with that
simple.
if people aren't doing what they're supposed to do?
Well, looking at page 38 of 51.
And this is the second time with that
No,
project,
I'm looking at page 38 of 51, and it looks like they're in compliance.
but they're not.
It says
Audit found out that with the reports for construction labor monitoring that they're not in
We're at
compliance.
70%, 70.3%.
It says they're at 83.
That was previously, after we sent them the letter.
Yeah.
And they supported the documentation. Remember, we gave them, in that letter, we clearly defined they had till the end of business day on the following Friday to supply Rose with all the information she required to
Yes.
move ahead. In the beginning, they didn't want to comply, and with that, they figured out a way that it was easy enough to get the information. And they got it to us, and they put themselves back in compliance.
Right.
This, basing it off of what, Diane is suggesting, it's becoming it's a roller coaster ride there. Each month, when Loki Brill goes back, there's a new issue.
Well, I'm looking at the last report, and our rule is 75%.
And it's 7.53 for the month of July, in terms of overall
So we're not seeing that in our packet then,
We're-
right? That's
We
not
see
here.
it.
No, that's the updated number.
This is the updated number.
Yeah, I'm sorry, when I talked to Diane, I told her I thought there might have been a discrepancy in the report that's here.
Yeah.
And between the other one that they had sent.
Yeah.
And so she's looking at something you don't have because
Oh,
that's
okay.
Loki Brill had an error, yes.
Okay.
Via email.
All right, I'll wait till the audit meeting, but beyond that, they need to give us a month of report and then a year-to-date.
Okay,
And
I can
even a
ask them for
chart
that.
that gives us,
We can
The
take the
roller
reports they
coaster.
send us.
Rose, is something that you can put together? as
Yeah,
well?
that's
We can
it's
put that
easy.
together.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Great.
That's no problem.
Okay, so, unless I'm missing something here, there's no issue in us doing what we're supposed to do as a
No.
board.
Letter.
Okay, so also then, every time going forward, I should
just
do that
finishing
too?
the thought.
Okay,
There's no issue with us doing what we're supposed to do, right?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, then
No,
we'll
it-
send them a letter.
I was looking
It
at.
should be as the chair suggested, it should be automatically going out the door.
Okay.
And we have it in our possession to do.
And the
So
other
it's
part
easy.
of that, Mike, is if, you know what, if they come in at 74.4 and we don't round it up, but for the last 6 months we send them a letter, we're gonna send them another letter. Because they're habitual.
Mhm.
And you know what? The only way you can solve problems is to document things. And document and document and document. We're holding people to a standard. Because if somebody could find a window where they just give out money for free, or incentives for free, I'll build a door around it. And we can,
But is the letter you're out of compliance and we're going to cut you off? Or is the letter you're out of
it,
compliance?
it
and-
documents, for me,
Yeah.
Faye, it documents where they're not in compliance, and in the future, if it's necessary to take action or seek a clawback, then we've documented it and we have proof that they haven't followed the terms and conditions.
How long is their pilot?
the pilot I think is 15 years for them,
But I
right?
think that also goes back to Rick's point, that if we have a year to date,
15.
we can actually
Yeah, and
also
it's just
say, last 6 months you've been out of
True
compliance,
story.
the last 4. So,
I mean, we could put our fingertips on that at any time.
What's their year-to-date?
Okay,
For the amount that they're getting, and I think it was 19 million, right?
Yes.
Okay, 19 million.
No.
We're only getting 13.
no, I'm sorry, 19 is the cost of the entire project.
Right, well, how much was, right.
Right.
But we're only getting 13 jobs out of this thing, so to be out of compliance
Yeah.
year-to-date, if that's what it is, by any significant amount, they're only giving us 13 jobs, and they're getting X in terms of a reducement. So I scratch my head and say,
And, yeah, but we're using
I
that
scratched my head
13
the first
jobs as an operating business, not in the construction
Right.
phase. So it's apples and oranges.
Exactly. I mean, and to be honest, right, to be candid, they could move up and down monthly, right?
Absolutely.
But they could end up at 75%.
So I think
Our
my,
pilot program, though, isn't based on the amount of construction jobs.
No, they got 3 points for the local labor is
Yeah,
what
but
we're
I'm saying, at the end of the day, in 2 years, when you go and you find out how many FTEs there are, you're not gonna go back to July of 2020 and say, you know,
No, but you could say that you're moving to a 10-year pilot because you don't have the 15-year.
What is
thing.
going on with this?
It's
I think
Danny.
there's a satanic thing going on.
Does he know that we can hear him talk?
Yes, yes.
If I may, to your point, Mr. Chairman, your documents typically say that even if you don't enforce any right of a breach, that's no prejudice to your right to do it at any time, but creating that record over the course of time helps in any argument for the materiality of a breach, if you
I
ever
don't
do
see
wanna pull the
any
plug.
other way, counsel, than to document things. Because I've known in my industry itself, I've gone in and a contractor shows up out of nowhere, and he's been working for 2 or 3 years, and nobody's monitoring it, and the judge says to you, well, he's been working in your jurisdiction, are you monitoring it? Well, if you're not monitoring it, so technically, we're gonna rule your contract with him invalid, and he's not responsible for all of that. So if we continue to monitor and hold people accountable for the things they're supposed to do, I don't think we're beating up or being punitive on businesses by asking them to follow up on what they signed on for, correct?
And I think you're right, that, Joe Scott's point that on average, they may be over the 75 fine. If we find at the end of the construction phase that they're under the 75 on a year-to-date basis, somebody mentioned they got 3 points for being 75 or better local labor. So if they turn out to be 55, then this board may want to consider taking those 3 points away in the calculation of the inducement, which then puts them, they got a 15-year.
And they would go to a 10-year
Puts
pilot
them
then.
into a different inducement. I think that's the only
Right.
reason
That
why we're
makes
going
sense.
through all
That
this.
makes sense.
It's in black and white, but we're reading it.
You wait until the averages
But I
pan
think,
out.
Sharon, it's not punitive, it's about accountability.
Right,
So
exactly.
listen, you're gonna set the tone,
Yeah.
and you're gonna ask people to be, to comply with what they signed on for.
Right.
That's all.
So, just give it to-
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, that seems audit report.
Okay.
Is there a motion to accept the audit report?
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Anything on the question? The only thing I'll add is moving forward, could we possibly include the year-to-date for my friend?
Yes.
Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried, thank you very much, Chair. Okay, that brings us to finance.
Nothing yet until we get our meeting together.
Okey-doke. You have any general idea, Faye, or?
Well, it's
What
gonna
time?
be in September, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll set it up with Rose and then we'll
Super,
figure it out.
super. Michael, governance?
We had a governance meeting on August 4th at 10 a.m. right here in this room. It was a good, productive meeting. We had a lot of ground to cover. We started with the reviewing of current policies. We made it halfway through, well, almost halfway through, 40% through our list. Some of the items we crossed over, we spoke about the audio policy, which we will touch base on a new resolution. The board has suggested to bring it, the governance board suggested to bring it back to the full body, that we eliminate the audio policy because now we're on live stream and on video feed. Also, we referred, there's several that have to go back to audit for review, background check policy, code of ethics. We reviewed the compensation policy, the defense and indemnification policy, enforcement of the agency projects have to go back to audit. We have a whole list. Did you get that, Diane? We're gonna be bringing back to audit. The fee schedule guidelines, and we stopped at the housing projects policy. Touching base real quick on the housing project policy, I believe it's in their packet, a resolution to amend the policy. Governance has approached council, and we asked them to look into any avenues we could do to expand on the housing policy, due to the current, landscape and the atmosphere that we have out there right now with the crisis of housing. Council did review it, and they came back, and governance suggestion is to adopt the addendum I can read what we would like to add at this point.
Could I have council give me a synopsis of the proposed amendment?
Absolutely.
Sure. So, what's being proposed is that, financial assistance could be rendered by this agency to, mixed-use residential project, would still have to be a commercial project, but a mixed-use, or other, not single-family in other words. There's a provision that would be added, provision E, notwithstanding anything here to the contrary, the agency may consider granting, by the way, so the agency retains its typical discretion in any application to any housing project or mixed-use project that includes a housing or residential component that has received the prior approval from the governing board of Ulster County and of each town, village, city, and school district in which the housing project is located. The notion being that those are the taxing jurisdictions that we want to be careful to protect and get input from, and if they're comfortable, and it's a project which in other respects meets the criteria of the board would have the discretion to act on it.
So essentially, what we're saying is the taxing jurisdictions recommend or come back to this board with a recommendation, but at the end of the day, it's up to the board at its discretion.
That's correct. In other words, even if you had the sign-off of all the taxing jurisdictions, your purview would still be your own, your discretion would still be your own. But you wouldn't act unless you had.
All right,
And is there a
I'm
number of
gonna
units?
call for a
with
roll
this?
call vote on that.
Why don't we have a number of units with this?
When you say in regards to number of units, what are you talking, like a condominium complex?
Well, I'm saying, shouldn't there be a minimum number of units for this?
First off, we're gonna have to have a motion, then a second, then we'll go to the question, we'll discuss it under that. Do I have a motion to go to a roll call vote?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. On the question, please, Faye.
Okay, my question is, on this particular addendum, number E, should we not have a certain amount of units with this? I mean, it could be a three-family house that somebody could come in, I mean, it could be a million different little tiny projects that don't enhance anybody or anything.
I think that would revert back to the board's discretion. On approving
Discretion,
that
right?
project.
That's what gives us the latitude with discretion.
Correct.
Anyone else on the question?
Yeah, so phase, I think I know where phase comes from. Joey, would you explain, this is not for single-family residential? That's part
Because,
A of the
right, because
question.
it would have to be it still has to be an IA project, it still has to be a commercial project.
Had to be a commercial project. So a commercial project would be, and it's defined in such a way
Well, commercial is
that it's
two-family
mixed,
or more,
it's mixed use, so it can't be an apartment building complex, and with nothing.
So I think it could be,
It
mixed
could be
use is
one.
one of the things, but it could be, and I think, some of what, again, Joe, Scott and I, in convening on this and coming up with the language, we're taking some direction from the board that we heard that the latitude was what you want. In other words, don't preclude things before you even know what might come before the board. So for instance, if you saw a project that because of the number of units didn't seem to have the benefits that made sense to induce it, you'd have the discretion not to induce it. But you wouldn't necessarily
Joe
bar
Scott,
it.
did
If
you
we
wanna
have this
jump in?
written in our,
And also to underscore what Joe was saying, Faye, was what we thought we would try to do is make the amendment as simple as possible, and the driver seemed to be, in meeting with the IDA members, that the entity that we would be looking to, or entities that we'd be looking to would be the taxing jurisdictions that are affected by the project. So if the city, town, village, county, school district was looking at the project and wanted the IDA to approve the project, consider the project, that would be the gatekeeper, if you will.
Public input.
Right, we could put all sorts of, it's gotta be 2 stories, it's gotta be 20 units, it's gotta be this, it's gotta be that, it's gotta be 20% retail. We could put all sorts of requirements in here, but, and we actually thought about that. But the driver was, hey, we generally, which is why the policy's in there in the first place, have concerns about housing. But if there's a groundswell based on the local governments wanting us to do something and assist a particular housing project, well, we'll consider it at that point, but only consider it if it's coming from the affected taxing jurisdictions.
So Joe, I see trying to keep it simple, right, so there is some latitude and flexibility. We decided that if we don't put some parameters around criteria for which we would even take it under consideration, at some point we're gonna have to make those decisions as a board anyway. So is it best to have some baseline criteria the board has agreement on that we would even consider such a project?
Yeah, because I think it's opening up a can of worms. with
Because
the
Chairman?
decisions there.
I believe,
Let me, the other side of that.
Rose?
Yeah?
I
Hold
think
And E,
the action we took a few years ago. Is somebody saying something?
Danny was trying.
Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
hey guys, in E, I do not see any wording, if this is what's gonna be the new law, I don't see any wording in this unless I'm missing it, where it says and or at the board's discretion.
no, it should say, may consider granting financial
Right.
assistance. And I think that's the phrase that everybody is jumping over. And once you put criteria in place and you start denoting that it needs 10 doors, or it needs at least four units, or whatever, I think what you do is you take away from the bite of may consider, and then you may have,
You open yourself up.
yeah, unscrupulous developers coming in and abusing that whole line of list.
To get back to.
So, and you have to go that way.
Is it either or, can we keep that in?
But it doesn't say that. What it says is it may
What I was
consider
gonna say
once it
before-
has,
What? Dan, we can't hear you, what?
it doesn't say that. It says the board may consider if it has the prior approval from the governing body of Ulster County, the town, the village. It doesn't state anything that gives us,
Discretion to not.
leeway, either way, consideration.
Please, counsel.
So one of the things, it's an excellent question, and it came up at the governance meeting as well. And what we said there was, it is built in to the IEA process, the law of how you operate, your authorizing statutes, that all your decisions are discretionary decisions. And when you start to delineate specific statements of that discretion, you run a risk, and I think maybe Joe will support me on this. From a legal draftsman's point of view, you run the risk of saying, well, if they're saying that here specifically about discretion, what does that mean about all the other places they have or don't have discretion? You always have discretion, always.
It says, Dan, to be clear. It says
Rose, can I
may.
see Joe Scott?
Dan, it says may,
Thank you.
it says may, and it says consider. It doesn't say shall approve.
They
So,
consider it's a big stroke.
yeah,
And I
consider means we'll look at the application and quote, consider it. And we'll make a decision based on
It
our
sounds
review
too
of the
soft to me.
application.
And there's no legalities coming back on us by saying yes or no.
Prior to us taking action a few years ago on this housing policy, that's how we dealt with all these. We were fine then.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we're reverting, but we're certainly giving input to the taxing jurisdictions. You know, I get it. I'm a big stickler, type A for criteria, but I think what we did in the past limited us. So if we can find a healthy middle ground for that, that's fine. I think one of those things is saying it's not an arbitrary decision on our part. We need to have,
I think, you know what I'm gonna say?
Sure. I don't, but-
I don't mean, but I think honestly, it should be reversed, and it should be saying about with the input from the towns of blah, 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 the board may consider at the end. But instead of it saying may consider in the beginning, and then you read all this, I think it just is a much better statement to say it that way. that with all the consideration, with all the input from all the local entities and the school boards, then the board may consider.
Isn't that essentially what we're doing? We're not doing anything until someone comes to us.
No, but I'm saying it's worded wrong, this thing. It doesn't have the impact by saying it may consider it to be.
I think opening with that statement where it may consider, I mean, that's the one that grabs your attention. The rest of it just falls into line. That's the way
Right, but I think that a lot of people wanna know that
Well,
we're
does it mean
really
the same no
concerned
matter how
about
it's
what
there?
the
Yeah, that's-
entities are giving us information wise before we even, you know.
well, like to Jimmy's conversation, they have to come to us first. So everything starts there. But once again, the discretion is up to this board.
I just wanna, I'm not looking for, everything nice and tight and neat, and I don't need to know that there's 10 doors or that's not what I'm talking about. And I'm fine if we just leave it at our discretion, but I think just as a board, we're gonna have to have, and we will, a conversation about what is we still need a criteria
Our
as a board,
parameters
as to
of what
what
we're willing to
actually is acceptable to this board to even consider, and we don't have to do it today. We don't necessarily have to put it in there if that works for everyone. I'm just saying we are gonna get to that point where we are gonna have to make a determination about what is the general criteria, not specificity here, but a general criteria, how we're gonna make decisions about this. That's
Does the
my
housing
point.
have to be, how about the housing has to be tied in some way, shape, or form to an IDA project? I mean, that,
So that's
I mean-
all that we can work on all that, but I think the main thing is we're voting on this right now.
yeah, but regardless of where you put, maybe I'm not seeing it, would you say that the meaning is the same? Regardless of how the language is lined up?
Yeah, if you took 160 words and you just moved them around, would it mean the same thing?
I mean, there's
Not
no
really.
clause
It's
that
gonna
says.
completely change.
What
How
I'm
does that
saying here
change
is,
it
if you
at
take
the
all
end
the
of the
bottom
day
half
it's
of the
that,
paragraph after may consider, and you move to the top, put
How
may
does it
consider the
change
last
it?
paragraph, the last sentence, does it
at the
still
end
mean
of
the
the
same?
day, if it's still up to our discretion? It doesn't, I mean, honestly, it doesn't. First, both of the necessary things, the taxing jurisdictions have to come to us, and then it's at our discretion, whether you put that first or put it last.
But is that,
The, the body of that's what I'm getting. I mean, I have no problem moving it around, it's the same
no,
language.
but I know what you're saying, but
If-
this is so generic that I don't understand, is there a public meeting that happens with this? Is there
Well, there
anything
won't
that
be anything until somebody
pre-screening?
comes to see us, that's up to the
I see what
public
you're
taxing
saying, move down the
jurisdictions.
road.
Is
to
this
set up their
how
own
we-
It's
how
the
we do
same,
this?
it's the same criteria set forth by the IDA after they get here. And let's say somebody walked through the door and go, well, I got this, this, and this, and as a board, we voted down, that's the end of it. That's the end of it, there is no
And it may
further
not be.
discussion by the client to us or, potential client. It's over with at that point, it's dead. So that gives everybody the power here. In this, the way this was written was proposed that way only to stay pretty generic. And in my life, the way I exist, less is more sometimes.
Well, you can always amend the policy.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that if somebody comes to us, let's say somebody comes to us with a project,
Mhm.
and we're like, you like it, I don't like it, you don't like it. And then, when do we know that the school is interested in it? When do we know that it's being supported by somebody? I mean,
We
if
take-
it's an entity that's coming to us first,
We take them and we point and say, listen, we can appreciate what you're looking to do. You
Here's
need
your
to go
task.
see the taxing
okay,
jurisdictions.
so
Yeah.
then that's the next step. See, I don't see any of that in there, I just see this very.
Well,
I think that reverts back to the regular IDA policy and getting the inducement. I mean, that's currently what every other client has done so far.
Okay.
If it's
Alright.
that kind of a policy, and this one, unlike a deviated pilot, this one here is pretty much laying it right out there for you. Before you can even, you have to have this approval before we even, we're gonna move to consider.
Everybody wants, one of the big issues that we seem to face sometimes in public opinion is input. So everybody's got input then, if you go to the taxing jurisdictions first.
So
If
we
you-
may consider it, we may approve it generally before we even know what the schools and everybody else
No,
feels about it?
absolutely not.
Okay, so it will come to us, then we'll say, go back and do whatever you have to do, and then we'll see what the input is.
They have all the
And then we may approve it,
Yeah, it's
correct?
like anything
They have
else,
to
you
do
may
all the
knock
way.
on the
Okay,
wrong door.
alright, so that makes sense to me.
is it the case, is it the case, a different point from what Faye was making, is it the case that we'll only consider residential commercial and residential mixed use? Or we will consider standalone residential?
Any house project or any mixed-use project that includes a housing or residential component.
Does that, so,
What, residential?
I don't think it's standalone.
You're talking spec, like spec homes?
Yeah.
It's not like a subdivision.
I don't think a guy building 20
So-
houses over there on spec is.
So should we use some terms that make sure
No, it's.
I think that's up to you to consider at that point. You just say, this is not something that this board
The board makes a
recommends moving ahead with.
determination.
that, so if somebody comes to us and it's an obvious subdivision, like the one
Mhm.
of the 30 houses and the houses are 250,000
In high falls. Yeah.
we said, no, we don't do subdivision, well, what does it say?
Well, we don't do that at all. We're not
Exactly.
making a decision. They gotta go to the taxing jurisdictions. And then the taxing jurisdictions may come back with the strongest recommendation you ever saw, but we say, we're precluded from doing that, standalone houses.
And also, we can call Rosie, call Joe or me, and we say you can't do it.
It's not commercial.
There's a lot of fallback stuff that we have
Do a single
to
family.
protect us in this provision. There's a lot of
Under the state.
I
underlying
don't wanna
stuff.
say I wanna limit our exposure, but you know what? There seems to be a lot of push and people saying, well, what about us? What about the district? What about the legislators? What about this one, that one? Well, guess what? You're the ones who'll make a recommendation to us after going through that process.
So it seems like the word commercial is important. And the IDA enabling statute, I think, uses the word commercial. So if the word commercial is important, and
Mixed
it
use is
avoids
important as well.
and gets rid of things like spec or subdivision,
Well, it doesn't get rid of spec. If someone comes in and says, I'm gonna do an 8-story.
I'm gonna do a commercial spec.
8-story market housing.
Okay, I take that back.
8-story market housing building downtown city.
I take that back. But the
Joe, we
word
could add commercial housing, just
But
commercial.
The word commercial seems to be
But it's-
important, because it's
Non-single
derived.
family
But
dwelling.
it's implied, is it not implied? Because of the statute? It's implied, it's in the statute.
The,
You don't have to add it.
What's implied?
It's
The
not
commercial,
defined,
we
it's
can't
just
do it if it's not
Right.
commercial, so our policy is only.
Single families
restricted-
don't count.
Yeah, so we don't have to put it in our policy
So that
because
would be our.
we're bound by
answer.
law.
Exactly. exactly. They could come with all the taxing jurisdiction resolutions they want, and we would say, okay, quit.
So I'm stating,
Circle.
I'm stating the obvious, that commercial has to be commercial. That's in the statute. Joe, Mike, Joe S?
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
so that's.
I'll make a motion to adapt the
How we doing? We have
resolution.
any other questions on this or discussion?
no, Danny just made a motion to accept the resolution to,
Well, we're gonna have to do a roll call vote, Dan. Can I have a second on that?
Second?
Okay, let's move to a roll call vote.
alright, I can get there. James Malcolm?
Yes.
Faye Storms?
Yes.
Diane Einen?
yes,
Michael Ham?
Yes.
Orlando Reese is absent. Daniel Savona?
Yes,
And Richard Jones.
Yes.
Okay, resolution's adopted. What else we got now?
There's the resolution also to get rid of the audio policy.
Yeah.
All
Can I
right.
get a motion on that?
Yes, I'll make the resolution
Thank
to
you,
get rid of
Faye.
the audio policy.
Dr. D, can I get a second?
second,
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Anything on the question? Nothing on the question. All those in favor?
I,
aye.
Opposed? Carried, thank you.
So Chair, just to round out the governance meeting, so we crossed the housing, the addendum and resolution and the audio resolution. We also, the committee
Yep.
actually revised,
Got it, Danny.
reviewed the
Thank you.
revision of the UTEP.
Thank you.
We had one thing that we found in there, we were looking to change in the UTEP, it's not a heavy lift. We were looking to change administrator in the paragraphs to CEO, which would better reflect Rose, okay? For future policies, we touched base on that real quick. We threw around the reasoning of looking into introduce a mentoring policy to move ahead and to help, future applicants better streamline coming in through the process.
Are we in conversation with economic development as far as that, Rose?
Mhm. Yes. Yes, and I meet with Lisa every Monday now, too.
Council, we be out of line putting all this under one motion concurrence or do them individually?
You should do that individually.
Mike, state your first one.
The first one is to revise the UTEP and change administrator to CEO.
I have a second on that.
I'll second.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Where was I? My notes. Are we going to do the mentoring policy through this? Like, you want to motion that, or you want to just?
Well, I
for
thought that was a
discussion?
given, if you wanna.
Yeah.
I thought that was a standard operating procedure that,
Yeah.
I guess if we gotta put it in there, then we put it in there.
You have to put, you don't have to put any kind of motion in place, we just do
No,
it.
not for that.
We can
Okay.
just move forward with it.
So we're okay.
And the administrator to CEO,
And the administrator to the CEO, we just did. We just approved.
okay. Anything
Okay.
else, Mike?
Yes, also, I believe in your packets, you also see that they have the compliance that we addressed. We addressed non-compliance issues. I believe it was a total of 15 we went through.
No, it's not.
Okay, it was a total of 15 we went through. The board agreed to send letters out to every one of these clients, explaining that we do not have the proper information at hand. They have until the 21st of August to get them to Rose, to the CEO, and at that point, we'll review with council and we'll look to go, further action.
I think, we're trying to put everything in play, but I think that's something that moving forward that we really have to address with maybe a line item in an application initially, and make them aware of it, that, because it ends up, the minutia of the whole thing takes forever. If you sent it in, if you didn't send it in. I mean, we're talking about our budgetary concerns, and, most of that is layers. So, that's just spitballing my food for thought.
One last thing that we were going to move over to audit for the 24th meeting. Also, Chair, if you.
Diane, I was on your side. They were trying to pile it all on.
Well, you know what, it's on housekeeping, we're finding out a lot of this has to go back to the audit, to go back to governance. We were also discussing down below, but like I said, we're moving back to audit, is the travel and discretionary funds policy. We spoke as a committee. Rose is currently, our CEO is currently going out of pocket on incidental costs for things. And we discussed the fact of maybe getting her a credit card, debit card with a cap, and providing her with that so she could get incidental without having to wait
I'm gonna
2
talk
months
to,
for,
I'm gonna talk to my financial expert over here.
yeah.
What are we going
Do
through?
you
Audit?
want this open-ended, or do you want to load it to a certain amount?
Well, Rose, what do you think that you
Credit
have?
card.
I mean,
I think it should be, yeah, we said, I think a credit card is better, because then there wouldn't be direct access to the bank account,
Okay.
and there's some leeway if there were fraudulent charges.
All right,
So
so you wanna
credit card
put,
with a limit, they'll set the limit.
that in form of a motion, Mike?
Yes, I'd like to motion that we provide the CEO with a credit card for incidentals.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Anyone on the question? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried? Thank you. And I need a motion to accept the governance report as presented.
Just one quick question on Mike's.
Yes.
The letters that we're sending out.
Yes.
Are
Did you,
they
have you seen a copy of any of the letters?
No.
Okay.
Are they out?
They're out.
No.
They're not out?
No, I have them for your signature.
This is, well, just back to order.
Oh, you have a stamp for that?
Should, I bought them enough.
Now she's got that card, so get a stamp.
You can buy one with the card.
Okay, so
Okay.
we're gonna get the letters, executed.
I apologize, I thought they went out. Were we waiting on, you know what we're waiting on?
Yes.
We're waiting on the definition of how to recapture on the bond.
I
I read
revised,
the letter, basically the letter pretty much, the first letter had it listed as a pilot. That's what.
yeah, their original agreements discussed a pilot, so I put that in there, but I did revise the letter, I got it back to Rose, it's very specific to the bond deal and their particular.
Mike was
agreement.
on that one, and we didn't, he thought that it wasn't very specific to it.
Yeah, because I'm not, I know that's a question I still don't know what the answer is to that, is how do you recapture on a bond? I don't have a clear, I'm searching around trying to find the answer myself.
Any exposure to that, Joe Scott?
Well,
You're,
Joe reached out to me, and I looked at the document, and in that particular, you're talking, I'm not gonna identify the
Correct.
company. The recapture provisions are limited to the sales tax benefits and the motor recording tax benefits.
And I seen that in the letter.
Which makes sense, because there was no pilot granted in that transaction.
And there's no change to the interest rate on the bond? The bond is still in?
There is, but, and I guess on a going forward basis, if you want to create that kind of recapture, you could do that. But the recapture is focused on the two state law exemptions.
I would recommend,
I would definitely do that. Bill.
I would recommend that we also.
I also recommend that, until we take, the last step, I recommend that these letters come from the board. I don't think they should come from the attorney until we go to terminate or full recapture, you know? Do you agree?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay.
I have one more question, and one of them was, they're actually out of compliance as of last year, I won't mention the name, they were out of compliance last year because they changed the nature of their business. And so the number of people that they promised that they would have decreased, potentially putting them into a different category and thus a lower. Did the letter, and maybe you remember which one that was, I don't know.
It's a letter
It just says to come back before the board. All the letters just say exactly what we said for every single
So the letters have
project
to come back to us.
and wrote down, yes, yes.
What we were looking for was the opportunity potentially to reassess. In other words, if they want to state their case, hardship, or why they can't comply, okay, then your deal just might not be the same. But
Yeah, just answer. They haven't answered anything in what, 2 years?
The other one, the bond one?
No, the one with the change.
They certainly wouldn't have made it in the movie.
All the
Goodfellas.
ones we did, it literally, each one we went through line by line. That's all the letters say, was line by line. If we said to come back to the board, it says come back to the board. If it was, I think all of them were to respond to the board. All of them
I'm
said
gonna
that.
move the question.
Mhm.
We have a motion and a second to accept the governance report as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Old business, status of pending projects.
So on page 51 of 52 of your packet, you have the 3 pending projects. Wildberry, there is no change. You're waiting for the completion of SECRA. There's no new news there as far as I know. Ulster NH Realty we'll discuss today, but the status is that there's an application for assignment, as you know. And Kingstonian, your status there indicates application under consideration. That is true. I will note, as Rick has noted a couple of times, and as this board knows, that application is actually still, it's actually, I think, not formally finalized yet. I don't know what, do they consider that complete, Rose? I know it's been raised whether or not that application is actually entirely complete. I just don't want to.
I'm sorry, which one?
On Kingstonian.
No, it's not. It's
Right,
not.
so it's still a draft application, as you know, they came here, tested the waters, we gave them some direction, they're off doing a lot of homework, at this point. But it's, you know, it's obviously.
They're meeting with pre-screening them.
Yes.
When?
Don't have a date. Can't get a response.
Need to expedite that.
I've tried.
And that's your report.
What seems to be the issue with meeting with pre-screening?
We had a date scheduled and then they canceled. And then I've not heard back still whether or not they can do the new date.
Well, I guess then it falls on them, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you want to get your project moving on, I suggest that, you know, you consider the time of this board.
Yes.
give them a few dates and tell them that's when we can fit them in?
Yes, I did do that.
We're having a problem coordinating the dates now because
That's not our problem.
I've
That's
already
their
got an
problem.
agenda put in place, and I'm sure some other people do too.
No, there were a number of choices.
Are you gonna expand on that?
I gave them a number of choices, and they just not responded again. That's all. So I'll reach out
Whether
again.
it's by
but I
phone or by email,
It's everything goes through Danny House. So I've been on the phone and emailed Danny.
Danny who, A-House?
A House. That's who does their
Well, then it
application.
falls on Danny A-House
Yes, it
to
does.
make themselves present and not do a Houdini here.
Yes.
We'll rectify that.
But I'll reach out again. But I have been doing it.
What was the original issue they had to cancel?
Joe Benora had something scheduled that day that he could not change.
Okay, well, we're not gonna continue to modify everything we have going on. We're not going to them, they're coming to us. So give them a few dates and tell them pick one.
Yes, I did do that.
Okay, this is the drop dead one,
Okay.
okay?
Yes.
Give them some dates and tell them to pick one.
Okay.
I think sometimes it gets reversed, though. Not by anybody in this room.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that someone would come and ask us for an incentive, yet want us to accommodate them up and down the line all the way through. I mean, I don't know. So, that's that. NH Realty.
Would you like me to?
Yeah.
Status.
So, this application, is for an assignment, as we discussed, of a current pilot agreement, and project agreements. There's been discussion with the applicant, throughout the process, about some modifications, if the assignment is approved. The, Rose and I had an excellent conversation, and based in large part on her very good work in, preparing a baseline set of proposals at this board's direction, for those modifications. As you know, the applicant has expressed from the beginning that they, full disclosure on this, that they have a very hard deadline at the end of August. They have a time of the essence closing. They had to let their deposit go hard in order to get even that extension, and so they're very concerned about the timing. And when we discussed on Monday, Rose and I, was it this Monday? Just this past Monday? Yeah. The three primary components of what would be proposed. One would be that there would be some minimum staffing that we'd like to lock in. Since at the beginning, the board will recall that it noted that this operator had some lesser grades for its other facility here that Golden Hill did. We want to make sure we at least maintain that some kind of objective criteria there. We discussed the application fee, and we discussed the changes, the modifications in the pilot. That conversation went very well. Rose delivered to them the breakdown she had done on the staffing based on her own homework on some of these objective standards. And the applicant yesterday expressed some concerns going forward because the jobs requirement being expressed there in our proposal were significant enough that it would require a re-underwriting basically of their financing to get their project closed, and that would put them past their deadline, et cetera, et cetera. So then they'd lose their deposit and they'd lose the deal. And so they respectfully, momentarily, thanked us for the hard work and said that they couldn't take that risk. They are, I believe, with us today because we have suggested to them that they present to us their thoughts on that staffing, how to maintain that level of care or improve it, and that's where we are. Rose, I don't know if you want to add anything or let the applicant. First of all, do we have Sal and Elliot?
Just Saul is on, I believe.
Just Sal. Okay. So Sal, thank you for joining.
Hi, Joe. Elliot, please on.
Oh, Elliot's there. Sorry, Elliot.
So
we can turn the volume up.
No.
I can't hear a word they
Do me a
say.
favor, sit up in the front.
So
I'm sorry, it is on high. I turned it up to 100.
Microphone?
So Saul,
100.
first of all, you've heard my preamble. I hope you could hear what I said.
Yes, yes,
And,
I can, thanks.
If
And
there's anything
that's-
about that that you'd like to speak to, obviously feel free. I think though it seems to me that the primary issue, and you may want to speak to it directly, is your concerns about the staffing proposals. And I just wonder if you would just illuminate the board a little bit on where you're coming from there.
No, that is correct. I mean, what you mentioned before regarding financing and how it would change the performer going forward is correct. So what we definitely did commit to is to keep whatever staffing they have right now, to keep that in place going forward. I just wanted to mention that you had in the proposal that Rose sent, you compared it with other facilities that have a little bit of higher staffing ratios, and that's correct. And these are facilities that we run. I mean, Timberridge specifically has a higher staffing ratio, and the reason for that is usually the staffing ratings are based on the RN staffing. The Timberridge facility is a smaller building. It's a 180-bed facility. So usually when it comes to, let's say, a director of nursing, an ADON, which is in every facility, when it gets proportionately split up between the residents and the facility, it's going to accumulate to a higher number of hours per resident per day. And that's why these facilities have a higher rating.
Right, but the concern was that Golden Hill should have a good rating as well. So if it's per resident per day, is it not per resident per day in order to get to the 3-star rating?
It is, but it's based on RN staffing, and the LPN is actually pretty high, but that doesn't count for the rating, obviously. As you can see, Golden Hill is a 5-star facility. At Tenbrook, we also have similar hours per patient per day, and that's a 4-star building. Staffing is the same, actually. It's other factors that matter into that total star rating. Again, our goal is to maintain whatever Golden Hill has right now. Definitely not to go down on there. Possibly to go higher, but we cannot commit as of this moment, since that would create a situation where we would need to go back to our banks and restructure that performance, which would take us beyond the hard date of August 31st.
So, Rose and Sol, and first Rose, is Sol proposing what you proposed in a letter to us?
No.
So could you explain the difference between what Sol is proposing versus what you recommended to the board?
Saul is looking for he's looking to lower what I had proposed and bring the nursing levels to what Golden Hill currently is. So
And
Golden Hills, even though it's a 5-star facility, its nursing is rated as 2 stars. And so what I had put together was what I thought would bring it to 3 stars. And the main issue was also to bring up the CNA's hours, because that would really help with the level of care, and it would also increase jobs.
So are we at least in agreement between what you've proposed and worked on and what Sol is talking about? Are we in at least agreement to the full number of FTEs, the 330, I think it is?
I don't know. Saul would have to speak to that.
Yeah, what's the question?
So right now, Golden Hill has 300, as of 2019, they had 330 full-time equivalent employees.
Yes.
So is that still the case? Is that what you would still be doing? You would still hold the 330?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
One of
it's not, and I just want to clarify, it's not that I'm saying that I wouldn't agree to go up. And our goal when we come into a facility is to assess whatever is going on in the facility and to kind of create a situation where the care is the best possible. And regarding CNA, it's not that we don't schedule the CNAs to a higher level. It's unfortunately CNAs are not always reliable to show up. And that's what ends up affecting our hours when we do report it to the Medicare, to CMS.
All right, so we're in agreement. Wait a minute, so I want to interrupt you because I don't think anybody here on the board has anything aside from what Rose gave us, and we just agreed that both of you agreed that we're going to stay at 330.
And that's
What we
with
don't
no
seem to be-
80%, right? I just
What
want-
we don't seem to agree on is the distribution of that 330. So unless I was to see something in writing,
He wants to stay at what Golden Hill is, so that's the second block down in the proposal I had sent you guys.
I don't see that. There's no numbers here.
Which
There's no
one are you
numbers of
looking at?
people.
Where are you looking? The second page. Third page.
Just, okay.
I don't have it in front of me. So you see the standards?
So I have proposed minimum, I have current.
Yes.
So what is Saul proposing?
He's the second block, he's proposing to stay at where Golden Hill currently is, which is at the 2-star nursing. And also a 5-star facility, right, Saul?
Yes.
And you're proposing,
The one above it, which would hopefully bring them to 3-star for nursing and increase mostly the CNAs.
by how many?
It's per resident per day because it's not something that we're trying to come up with something that wouldn't be an extra, something that we're not
Okay,
able
so
to
the
track.
CNA
So this
the
is
CN
something Medicare already tracks, so that we wouldn't have to recreate the wheel to try to track nursing homes.
So Saul wants to keep the CNAs at 2.14 hours per resident per day.
Correct,
You're suggesting that it goes up to 2.75.
correct.
So how many FTE CNAs does that represent?
It depends on how many residents they have in the home.
Well, not really, it depends on, I mean, whether you have one resident or, I see what you're saying,
Yeah,
yes, okay,
yeah.
okay. I don't know how to, I don't know how to negotiate through this. Let's set this issue aside
Can
for a
we have a
second.
little clarification for a second, Rick?
Yep.
Joe, you wanted to say something?
So I think, just to be clear, Saul, I think what you're proposing is that it's an assignment of an existing agreement, and you're proposing that you would lock into both the total number and the current distribution of staffing, medical staffing, et cetera, as it is right now to maintain that performance at Golden Hill. That allows you to get to your closing. That's what, just to be clear, that's what you're proposing, right,
I want to
Sal?
make sure that what you're just saying, that you two, I want to hear out of both of you now that
Yep.
you agree.
Me too.
So let me ask you real specifically. The distribution of staff incurring, the total number rather, is 330. You will all agree to that. Yes, Saul?
Yes.
Okay. The distribution between professional staff and non-professional staff, all those distributions, whether it's CNA, RNA, PA, doctors, you're saying he agrees to that. Are you agreeing to that distribution within each of those categories? Are you agreeing to that, Saul?
At the current level,
At the
Sal.
current level?
So that you wouldn't change as well.
Correct.
So how do we do, so you would keep at the per residence per day? What are we talking here? Because we have to do something that we're able to track without some
Well, I
massive
think Rick
burden
just
to
asked a
the
very
agency.
specific question, though. You're just talking the job distribution, the different disciplines, the professional, non-professional, et cetera, at the numbers that they currently have. That's what Saul is
The
committing to.
proportion of, not the gross number, but the proportion of, because the gross number will go up and down depending upon
Right.
the
Right,
number
the
of residents.
proportion, right.
The proportion.
Is that right, Sal?
Yes, that's correct.
So I think we're there. Except for Rose is suggesting we go higher on the proportion in order to get a higher level of service.
Right.
All right. So I want to, we're not
So
Medicare,
again,
we're not New York State
I'm not-
Health Department. I have a little bit of concern with going there, but let's hold that thought, all right? All the other issues that we have on the table, the amount of fees you're gonna pay us, as well as the taxes, is there any confusion or disagreement about those?
I have not heard that, Saul. We discussed it on Monday. We told you, I believe, specific numbers, but are you comfortable with what we discussed on those 2 points?
I mean, I'm confident. I just wanted to understand because how the numbers go up. Let's say in year 25, it says 90% of what the tax due is, whatever the total tax due is that going to stick to a 90 percentile, whatever it is at point? In other words, if it
Yes.
doesn't go up by 4% every year, what's gonna happen?
Yes, it's 90% of whatever the tax is at that point. That's how our pilots normally run.
Got it, okay, then
So,
I'm fine
but
with
let
it.
me make sure I understand. He had a specific question about year 25.
Yes.
Starting in year 8, which is next year, 2021, his taxes go up from what they would have been under the current agreement. And in year 9 and year 10. So this schedule that Rose prepared, Saul and Joe, what I'm asking is, do we have an agreement on
Yes.
this?
You have an agreement on this schedule, yes.
Okay, do we have an agreement on the fees we're gonna collect?
The board has not,
Well, the board hasn't
discussed it
discussed
at
it.
all.
What's been disclosed to Saul,
Yes,
at least.
yes, Saul, you were in agreement with that if that's what the board chooses?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'm gonna stop there and come back to the question. I mean, that sounds like a good thing. I'm gonna be quiet, and I don't have a solution to the numbers of people, because I don't wanna play the role of Medicare or New York State Health
Right.
Department or anything else, but I do wanna insist on the proportion of professionals that they currently have, which again will go upward,
Which they
will
said
stay
they'll be.
static regardless of the number of people that are there. That's okay, I think.
That'll be static
But now
regardless.
I wanna hear
But
from the
if
rest
they
of the board.
increase,
Well,
because-
Mike,
you know
what if
what?
they increase the people
Can I
there?
just put something out there? Your concerns have been addressed, right?
Yes,
And you're happy with the
I'm
answers?
happy,
Okay,
yes, but I'm
So-
one of seven.
I-
so one question is
I'm
this.
just gonna finish my
Oh,
thought.
I'm sorry.
We can't continue to chase this rabbit down the hole.
Right.
I mean, you can't make a guy alter his employee structure day to day because there's an uptick. You know, I mean, if 5 new patients comes in and that moves the dial,
But that is taken care of by the proportionality.
okay, so that's what I'm getting at. I mean, Faye's got a question, but I think for all intents and purposes, they've kind of done what we asked them to do. And he didn't even argue about the taxes, which makes me think that we didn't get enough solved. But
I think we're trying to be fair with that.
My question is, are all the beds filled in that facility? Is there room for more beds to be filled? And if they are, and if there is room, will they be hiring more staff?
Saul, did you hear that?
Again, what was the question?
So if you do end up, first, is there room for more patients?
So their census ran recently at 96, 97. I mean, before COVID, it was at 96,
really.
97.
96 to
so it's not-
97% capacity.
Yeah, so not a lot more.
Not a lot more space. I know you're planning on some improvements. If you were doing improvements, is there an ability to add more beds?
No.
Okay.
It would require a whole CON process, which is not something that comes
Okay,
by
so
easily.
you can't necessarily add a few hundred
Correct.
more residents, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
No, we can't.
Okay, so then we don't have to worry about you adding residents and not having adequate staff.
What else, Rick?
That's correct.
Great.
Okay, where do we go from here?
Good.
Seems as though, Dr. D, you have any questions?
I do not.
Public hearing.
All right.
Michael?
Nothing.
So,
Well, let me finish my roll call. Rick?
Well, for the public hearing, too, right? Okay.
Well, I want to get a consensus of the board.
Okay.
I want their feelings before we take a vote. If there's anything else out there. So do we have to put it in the form of a motion for a public hearing, a roll call? First, let me ask Sal, are you happy, Sal?
I mean, I hope to be a good partner with the IDA going forward. We're going to be doing a lot of business in that county. We want to continue
There's
to
nothing
provide
that can't be
jobs.
solved with a little discussion. And a
What
little.
is it?
There's nothing that can't be solved with a little discussion and something else. I don't know.
a lawyer.
Oh, a lawyer. Yeah, so Elliot can attest to
So-
that.
So we're gonna move to have a roll call vote to move it to a public hearing. Please?
James Malcolm,
Yes.
Faye Storms,
Yes.
Diane Einen,
Yes.
Michael Ham,
Yes.
Orlando Reese is absent, Daniel Savona is absent, Richard Jones.
Yes.
Daniel Savona's on there, isn't he?
Nope, he left at 10:29.
Okay, so it's, we'll make arrangements for the public hearing. I know you wanna say something. We'll make arrangements for the public hearing. Council?
The other thing you should do is formalize the fee proposal, since it's a discretionary fee, you have a $3,000 minimum, and then you set the fee
Oh, it's
after that.
not gonna be the minimum.
No.
No, my point is,
you should memorialize what
A lot of
Rose
accommodation
has
went on here.
proposed.
I don't see a $3,000.
No.
I'll turn it over to Mr.
No,
Hand.
we have more than $3,000 in staff time already. So, what Joe, Ariel, and I had been working on as a proposal for all projects, not just for Golden Hill, would be in a case like this where a project is potentially transferring its pilot. We would do 1% of the difference between the old amount of the project and the new amount of the project, or 25% of the 1%, because the 1% is what we normally do.
Going backwards, when you say amount of project, what does that actually mean?
So in this case, the project was originally $13 million. It now is going to be $42 million. So it would be 1% of the difference. The numbers are in front of you on the packet, I think. I don't have that. So whatever that number is, I think it was 275,000-ish. Then the other choice would be, or the lesser of 25% of 1% of the difference between the, of the new project amount, right, Joe?
Right.
Yeah. So, or with not anything coming less than $5,000.
Let's use your initial.
So it's 105,500, I believe.
How about
for-
we utilize
for
your
journey to
initial,
get to that, wasn't it?
because this is a deviated, it'll be deviated. How about we use your initial proposal, the 1%, and then we'll run it back through governance and audit to,
So the 1% of the difference?
yeah.
Okay, so then the 275-ish?
No, but you don't want that in this case.
That's what he's saying,
Discuss it here.
right?
Yeah, may I make a suggestion? What Rose is talking about is a policy, and I think it makes sense to have more of a locked-in policy on these things. What we need to accomplish, what you need to accomplish in order to get our housekeeping done on the Golden Hill project is set a fee today for Golden Hill, just because it's in your discretion. Set a fee so they can pay the fee and we can close the transaction. That proposal came out to 105.5.
But that was assuming that was that they were going to choose that option.
I understand, but the proposal,
Right.
even on our
And so
proposal, like it was like. the
Jimmy is
minimum
saying
on
the 275, I think.
Well, he didn't say, he said 1%, but I just want the
Right.
board to
That's the
know.
1% of the difference.
1% of the difference. What's that total?
1%
1% of the difference is the 275
Yeah.
figure. You
That
have,
is not what Saul agreed to, just to be clear.
Well, what did he agree to?
The 105.
and I explained to Saul when he agreed to that I had not discussed any of it with the board at all.
No, I understand. What I'm saying is, I want to make clear, because Rick was careful to make clear. I believe the fee that Saul thought he was nodding his head to there was the 105.5. That's
Right,
all I'm
I
saying.
know, right. We would
There's
have
a lot of real
to
estate between 105.5 and
we would have to talk to
275.
Saul again about it,
I
but that's what
suggest
we
you go
said.
back to work with Saul and find something that's amenable.
Okay.
So you may have to go back and do that. I just don't wanna squeeze.
You don't want to squeeze somebody?
That's a first.
That's
Whoa.
I mean, we're getting an enormous, in my mind, we're
Yes,
getting
we
an
are.
enormous amount of additional taxes that's coming to the different entities.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part.
That's a win.
Where,
The fee to us is, okay, it's gravy, and it goes into our budget, which hopefully we can utilize for things like the
why don't we
grants
get Saul's
and-
input on this?
So I don't want to
Saul?
squeeze,
Saul, do you have input
Hey,
on
Saul, I'm thinking of a number.
this? Oh my
Joe,
gosh.
we did, like you mentioned, we discussed the 105. If it goes more than that, I guess I'll have to go back and have a conversation. But it's a little bit.
Okay.
It's 105 was higher than I expected. 275 is definitely way higher.
Okay.
So the directive
Come to me in
then,
November.
just, and I only press the point because, there's 18 days left in the month. The directive, it sounds like, is Rose and I will speak with Saul, get back to you, we'll arrive at that fee.
Well, listen, Joe, you know what? I've negotiated a lot of contracts. You ask for more, you'll get less. So there's room there for him to move up and us to move down and accommodate each other and make it a good, strong project moving forward. Because we don't want to play catch up when it comes to a $3 million pilot that they'll be looking for in a few years to expand. So
7 months.
it's a negotiation, but in theory, we're in agreement here. and we'll decide on we'll come to a happy medium, Saul, on the fee. No one's gonna get hurt.
Joe, I know you'll get it done quicker than Mnuchin and Pelosi negotiate, so.
I would.
All right, do we have to make a motion on that or anything?
We already made a motion to go to a public hearing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're good.
So that's it.
The other piece, just to let the board in on kind of how this will play out, is either at that same meeting, because you can have the public hearing, open it, close it, and then continue into a special meeting where you consider the project documents that Joe and I will work on, et cetera. Or you could schedule a second meeting. I know that's a lot in August. I will mention that the governor did extend his executive order to allow for Zoom meetings if that becomes necessary. But whatever you choose to do, just bear in mind that you will then need one other action post-public hearing. That could either happen again the same night or a different night depending on people's schedules. But that's how this will play out.
And I'm sorry, does Saul want this done by the end of August?
Yes.
Right, and
Yes, it has to be.
and so that also means, the last piece of the puzzle is that, I think it would make Joe and I feel better if we had the consensus of the board that we can start to head towards, documents so you're ready to act in August, if you choose to approve.
Assuming everything was okay with the public hearing, right?
We absolutely thought you were ready now.
Well, we
Of course I am. That's why we need more on the fee, Joe,
That's it, Joe.
because you're not gonna do it for free, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, all right,
Okay.
Saul, thank you very much. We
Thank
certainly appreciate you
Thank you,
taking
Saul.
time,
Thank you,
and I'm
Elliot.
glad we could have some sort of resolution.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you to council. What a wonderful job that you did along with the CEO.
We definitely appreciate it. Looking forward to
and
work together.
everyone else. So nothing's ever dead until it's dead, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that is the fact.
All right, new business, TPE grants for board consideration.
We have to go through every single one.
Yes.
No, we don't.
Or unless you're gonna just say yes to all of them, right?
Well, you know, except for the discussion we had in executive session regarding some concerns over boxes that were checked and people, if they understand what that actually means, or there's something that should be with the CRC as opposed to the IDA. Contingent on that, I'm willing to entertain a motion for a yay or a nay.
Okay, so the only thing you would do would be to move the ones that were
Yeah, I mean, the key is the number of employees for compliance. And with respect to publicly, when I read the application, I read publicly held to be like Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company is publicly held. ABC Appliance Shop is owned by Harry, so that's the difference.
Charlie.
Exactly.
So, Rose, do you want to mention which ones are CRC before we make that?
Sure, that's fine with me. So Ellen, I already had a couple over there. So out of the IDA, we would be moving from on page 52, we would be moving Ellenville Public Library, West Hurley Public Library. Those look like the only ones that were governmental on here, right? Yes, entity type all the way to the right. That's the only one I see GOV. So just those two. The rest would be approved through the IDA.
Sure. And if you happen to run into one that may very well be, should be on the other side, we can move that as well.
Okay.
So I have a motion for concurrence with the grants.
I'll second.
I have a second. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you very much.
That's great. So,
Public comment on agenda items. Bill?
Motion to adjourn.
No. Listen, he's 100% right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Second.
For this meeting, you'll be. I'll make the motion to adjourn. I have a second with Diane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Does anybody need a break before moving into the CRC?
I do.
Yes.
probably.
Rose, we have to stop and start again.
Yes, please.
Yeah, you're very tan.
Rose.
Yes, sir.